right is only through court order. And then they find ways around that as well. So, you know, it's the same thing with the fish consumption rate. And water quality standards sure raise the rate, but lower the risk values so that you can have more toxicity in there. You know, it's got court case written all over it again, unfortunately, to try to get them to do the right thing.
And it's really true. If you raise it to 175 grams a day, if you lower the cancer rate, they can put more pollution in the water.
Yep.
More
Even
pollution,
at
not less.
10.5 and you're,
It's crazy. Yes, ma'am.
Do you know if they were planning on doing a water quality, drinking water quality assessment then versus now, or will be in 20 years?
Do you mean Department of Ecology or USGS or the county? As far as the EIS, I don't know that they're looking at that directly. That would be an important question to ask. They won't release, I've asked numerous times that they will not release the standards for their impact assessment or the health impacts in the EIS. They won't release them. And why, I ask probably once, I used to ask every week, now I ask once a month. They're not releasing what their standards, or even the issues that they're going to address. It's sort of crazy. What I do know is that, for example, in Lake Whatcom, the water in the town, there is a fish advisory there about mercury levels in the lake. And we now know, because you can speciate where mercury comes from, that the mercury in Lake Whatcom, between 15 and 30% of it comes from China, from coal-fired power plants. So even though we think we're sending it over there, the pollution stays over there, it doesn't stay over there. It goes up in the air and it comes back here. And 15 to 30% of the deposition of mercury in this entire state comes from Chinese coal-fired power plants. So there are water impacts that are known and well studied, multiple studies, not just one study that show that. So one of the things we're doing as a doctors group is that we raise the money to do 3 additional studies. We're going to do a study of noise, a proper study of noise. We're going to do a study of air pollution, both diesel particulates and coal, and we're going to do a safety traffic study issue. And we're funding that with our own billfolds to get the job done. Because I don't think they're going to do those studies. And EIS won't allow you to acquire new studies. They only allow you to analyze the studies that have already been done. And so we're going to do those 3 studies and make them available to them so they'll have at least data on those things that they otherwise could say, well, we just don't know. Yes, Jay.
The noise, that song you mentioned about the killer whales, I heard that yesterday or the day before from him, and it was awesome. But when you talk about noise and the impacts and how you didn't really realize the significant impact it had on us and our health. And then learning about that and the whales, how they used to be able to communicate with their young in different bays up to 10 miles away. And now they can't communicate with one another if they're outside of 100 yards because of all the traffic currently coming through to Cherry Point, to Canada, and then the boating, things that take place. But to really put that into perspective, or how do we put that into perspective? 482 new Cape-sized tankers that are just monstrous, coming through one a day, on top of the increased oil tanker traffic. It's really concerning, and it should be concerning for the whole community.
And when the impacts, the impacts on people, it's got to have the same kind of impacts on the animals. It's not a miracle all is going to die. It's not chance alone that the salmon are a fraction of they used to be. And these things have real impacts.
And these divers, Juanita's son dives, both of them I think, and we all know divers, and they'll tell you they'll be underwater and they can come up and look around and see what that loud noise was and not see it. And there'll be a tanker going by 3-4 miles away, but it's so loud underneath the water. I've heard numerous divers tell me that.
Water transmits far better than air does.
So one question. If you were to go before the entire General Council of the Lummi Nation, from a doctor who's got credibility within this nation, with their people, as a doctor, health specialist, in a short sentence or two, and I know that'd be tough, but what would you advise, what would you advise us to do in terms of, well, maybe not advise us to do, but are there serious threats to the human health of the Lummi Nation people who live within the boundaries of this reservation and consume the fish from the Salish Sea? Are there immediate threats from coal itself in coal beds?
The short answer, of course, is yes, and it's at multiple levels. So there are impacts directly on people, and those impacts would be decent particulates and coal dust both in terms of air quality. There would be noise impacts for anybody close enough to be impacted by noise, and it would be the safety impacts both for traffic on the water and the traffic impacted by the trains directly. So those are direct health impacts to humans. Those aren't specifically quantified at this point, and the health impact assessment study has to include information on how those things will impact life specifically. I think you need to ask the Department of Ecology specifically to do that. And then there are a bunch of secondary impacts though, because what about the impacts on safety? What is the Lummi Nation if they're releasing? It would be a very, very different place. And I think you have to account for those impacts. Herring, salmon, and the larger species as well.
Bottom feeders.
Yeah, all those things could be impacted. So one of the things, for example, one of the impacts that's known is just the particles landing on the water. There's plenty of pictures of it at West Shore and all places where it's cold. It lands in the water, it sinks down in the water, and it lands on top of the eelgrass. And it's below the tidal area, it's going to stay on top of the eelgrass. And you know what that does? It kills the eelgrass because it simply doesn't get light, because this is poured on, poured on, poured on, poured on. So it's covered in coal. The eelgrass dies. What happens when the eelgrass dies? Yeah, no eelgrass, lots of other species die, including the herring. Then you've eliminated the herring, which the salmon rely on. I mean, that's the kind of, that's just a physical barrier to life of this dust in the eelgrass. I mean, those kind of things need to be studied and thought about. You've seen those slides. I've got this series of slides. You go through and here it is in 1970, here's in 1980, here's in 1990, and you know, the only places any herring left is at Cherry Point. And that's because people aren't, it's a marine reserve. And in that marine reserve, there are little lines built around those docks, so they're not in the marine reserve. I mean, it's a marine reserve for a reason.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, I'd love to say I have the answers, I don't, but I've got the right questions, I think, so. I think those are the questions you need. You need answers for the Lummi people. What you want to know is how many people are going to be impacted by it? How many people, and what health consequences? And they have the money to do that study. They won't do it unless you ask them. From their point of view, why would they answer that question? Why would they ask that question? It can only be bad news for them.
Recently, it came to light that there's that liquefied natural gas port.
There is one more port up there everybody ignored, yeah.
Yeah,
That got
that's not
sold
on the
recently
radar.
because somebody wants to make it a lot bigger.
Yeah, so, I mean, when we talk about cumulative effects, I mean, from what I understand, they're gonna use the Intalco port to transport that, because it's right there. So is that going to, something we can factor into the ship traffic? Do you know anything about how many ships there are?
No, I don't know. I
Okay.
know it's far less than this, because it's not as big a volume right now.
Okay.
What I know is that you have to look at cumulative impacts. And that's, again, the industry doesn't want to look at cumulative impacts. They want to look at just as narrow as they can. But you have to look at cumulative impacts. You got to look at not just what this will do, but what will all the coal ports
Yeah.
do. Right across the border to Canada, they have much laxer laws. There's no Clean Air Act, no Clean Water Act. I've been to every municipality in the Lower Mainland. They all have passed resolutions against the coal port there, and it's going to get built in. The school districts even pass resolutions against it, because when people find out the facts, they don't want it. But it's a federal jurisdiction only. And so it's gonna be it's gonna be a pace, kind of like if the Lummi decided to take this on and say their treaty rights were in question. The municipalities up there are gonna take the federal government on, and they already are. And who wins? It's politics. And right now, Stephen Harper makes Bush look like a liberal. I mean, he's awful. Yes.
I think another thing that has to be addressed too is the fact that it's not, the actual facts aren't being made known enough, what we do know now. Because like I was talking to my grandparents and they're like, well, I'm kind of wishy-washy on the subject, I don't really understand. So then I gave them an 8-page essay I wrote and they sent it around to everybody in the family and they're like, we have to stop this. They have 12 kids that they sent it to. So I mean like, actually getting it out there and making every fact known possible is so large because people just don't understand what it's actually gonna do, just because they don't know. They're like, oh, well, it'll bring jobs to Whatcom County, but that's not the problem. That is not the problem. We have one of the highest rates of like workforce going on. Yeah, there's still unemployment, but there's unemployment everywhere.
So I think you're right. And the reason I took my time today to come and talk to you